Welcome back to Sow Grow.
Hello and welcome back to Sow Grow and Cook. It's an absolutely horrible rainy day today, and I was going to give you a tour of the vegetable patch and the small holding, but the weather has just totally put me off. We've just got incessant rain, and apparently there's more to come tomorrow. So instead you're going to have to put up with my plan B, and that is telling you what I'm going to be sowing this week. So let's start with these. I've got some flat leaf parsley, the seeds of which I saved back in 2020. Now, I've planted 2-year-old parsley seed before, and it generally, you have to plant a few more just to make sure that the germination rate is good. But there's so many left over from that year that I didn't want them to go to waste. So I'll be planting these. I love flat leaf parsley. I use it quite a lot in soups and stews. I even put it in salad. And I put it in omelettes as well. It's really, really useful. And it's full of nutrition. It's full of vitamin C and all sorts of folic acid and other things. It's also very cold tolerant, so you can keep it going over the winter outside or in your polytunnel. And it's a really, really good vegetable to have, or herb to grow. Okay. Number 2 on my list is celery. I love celery, and again, I love using it in soups and stews. I don't eat it raw so much because the ones I grow tend to be a lot more leafy and quite intense in flavor, and I find them really better for cooking than for eating raw. Nonetheless, it's a really useful vegetable to have. It's also very slow to germinate, so I'm going to put the seeds in little pots and put them in the propagator or in the airing cupboard to help speed things up. But it's a very useful vegetable to grow, and it will take a few weeks to get going. Right, number 3 on my list is lettuce. I love a salad all year round if I can grow it. Currently in our polytunnel we've got some oriental greens that I use as salad, and they've been supplying us for the last few months now, and they're very delicious. I've got a few lettuce plants in there as well, but they're growing far more slowly. I'm going to grow these indoors, and then when the seedlings are about a couple of inches or a few centimeters high, I'll transplant them into a protected raised bed in the polytunnel to get an earlier crop. If you live in a relatively temperate climate or something similar to what we've got here in West Wales, which is mildish winters, although it is cold, you could probably get away with growing some of these under a cloche, some hoops and plastic or fleece in early spring, but you would have to keep an eye on it. But there's nothing like fresh salad leaves. Finally, this week I'm going to be growing some Swiss chard. Now, I've saved these seeds, and they're the rainbow mixed variety, and I love Swiss chard. Again, they're cold tolerant. They don't like extremely heavy frost, but they will take some cold weather. I'll start them off inside and transplant them again out into the polytunnel or under a cloche in the garden in sort of early spring. And I use chard in omelettes and spinach cheese pie. I put them in soups and stews. I put them in curries. Absolutely delicious. The absolute workhorse of green vegetables. Highly recommended. And they last like a year. And they will go to seed the following year. They're a biennial, but well worth a try. So Swiss chard is my 4th one. How many of you collect the inner cardboard tubes from toilet rolls, kitchen roll, paper towel rolls. I know I do. And I've used these as sort of little plant pots for lots of different things. They're especially good for planting parsnips into. But the one complaint a lot of people have is filling these up, which are open-ended. Even if you put them in big trays, the soil always seems to fall out. But there is an easy way around that, and that is to fold the bottoms in so that they contain the soil a bit better, and I'll show you how you do that. It's a little bit fiddly, but once you get the hang of it, it's a doddle. Okay, so you take your tube and you flatten it, and then you open it up and you flatten it again. So you've got two folds, and it kind of turns a round tube into a square. Now you've got to take your scissors and cut a couple of centimeters or about an inch, no more, on each of those folds. So you're going to do 4 cuts. Okay, now you take what you've cut and you fold it back and forth to make it easy to manipulate. There we go. And here's where the fun begins. So you fold it one flap at a time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now what you want to do is take this 4th fold and slip it under the 1st so that it holds it in place. You might just need to lay it down, poke it down with a pen, there you go. You can then fill that up with compost, and it should stay seated in your tray. Here's some I made earlier. And you don't have to have them as tall as that. These are really good for parsnips and peas and things. You can have smaller ones to plant little things like, just trying to think what you could plant in that. Lettuce, you could plant little lettuce seedlings in there. And they're totally biodegradable, so you can plant the whole thing in the ground. So try and maximize the space, the growing space that you've got. It doesn't really matter if you've just got a few tubs to plant into, or pots, or a window box, or if you've got a raised bed or 25 raised beds. Try and think of your area as a space to provide several crops of different things. So you could start off with lettuce in one area and follow it on with some radishes, or you could plant some sugar snap peas or beetroot, or have some little leek plants that are ready to go in. Always try to maximize your growing space by thinking of at least 2 crops, sometimes 3 if you're planting the right sorts of things. I never leave my summer season beds empty. If I've harvested some potatoes from one area, I follow on by planting some autumn leeks or some kale or some sort of purple sprouting broccoli. I want to maximize the space that I've got, and I want to have a continuation of vegetables growing. It helps in your quest to be self-sufficient. So always think about other things you can plant in that space. Well, that's all for today. See you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe.